Delegates are Ms. Rita Roy Chaudhary, Assistant Secretary General, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, India. I welcome you to the dais, ma'am. Mr. Johannes Uhl, Project Director, Energy Foreign Policy, GIZ. Ms. Paula Santos, Technical Director, Spanish Photovoltaica Union, UNEF, Madrid. Ms. Immaculada Miracle, International Project Manager, Europe, Central and South America, INES. So the panel will discuss growth opportunities in the sector through incentives, new infrastructures, policy, new technology and solution showcase, industry analysis, strategic collaboration opportunities and challenges of how to promote electric vehicles and opportunities ahead. Discussions will include range of technological innovations, policy and regulatory support, attractiveness business models, and financial structuring that can create an enabling environment for e-mobility. Panelists in this session will analyze current electric vehicles and latest developments, challenges, and opportunities of charging infrastructure, particularly in rural areas. With speakers from across the entire battery value chain, the panel will provide insight on how to manage the foreseen growing amount of batteries, impact of electrification on the energy sector. With this, I now request Ms. Rita Roy Chaudhary, Assistant Director General, FICCI, to please present the opening remarks.
Thank you. So welcome to this session on mobility. It is an honor for me to do the welcome and the context setting for this session on behalf of the International Solar Alliance and as the convener and secretariat for the Global Leadership Task Force of Corporates on Innovation, constituted by ISA. I am from the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, an apex industry chamber in India, apex and oldest and largest chamber of commerce, which works in the entire spectrum of the economy, and sustainable mobility is a very important part of our work with business and industry and the government. So it's really a privilege for me to speak in this session. As you all know, the International Solar Alliance has 5 programs that it is executing in the member countries of the Alliance. The 5th program is on scaling up solar e-mobility and storage. And it really aims to promote, assess potential, and harmonize the demand for the rapid deployment and scale up of solar mobility. So it looks at pooling of resources for rapid deployment and the scale up, both these aspects of mobility based on solar, but also the charging infrastructure that has to accompany the deployment of mobility solutions in both urban and in rural areas. In the duration of 5 years, the scope of this program will include scaling up of solar e-mobility and storage in the prospective member countries, along with the adoption of solar energy in urban rural transport, the associated technologies, and the charging infrastructure. So that's an introduction to the ISA's 5th program on mobility and storage. But let me also mention what we are doing in India as far as mobility is concerned. The Indian government has launched a major program to support transformative action in the space of electric mobility. There is a national government scheme around this to promote the manufacturing and deployment of electric vehicles in the country. The Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry that I represent is working on a roadmap for India on low carbon and sustainable mobility with the objective to look at decarbonization of the transport sector in India. So we are working closely with the Paris process on mobility and climate, and this initiative is also supported by WWF India and the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. So what we are looking at really, and this is very important to today's discussion, is not just to look at mobility, not just to look at it as transportation, as a means of transportation, but what we are looking at is to have a much more holistic thinking on mobility and to look at the mobility as movement of people versus mobility as a movement of vehicles. So it is all about movement of people, not just movement of vehicles. And there is a very key differentiation there, because when we look at movement of people, then we look at design options that will facilitate convergence, that will facilitate clean, safe, connected, charged mobility, right? And that is what our approach is as we build the India roadmap on this. So we are really looking at a stakeholder-driven approach. It is an initiative that we have launched, which is with the help of business and industry to provide a strategic direction to the government on what a sustainable mobility ecosystem in the country must look like. So we are looking at an entire ecosystem of mobility based on movement of people. And so this is a paradigm shift in the way mobility is looked at, and I think today's discussion would help to highlight some of that. I also want to mention that one of the things that we are looking at when we talk about how India could design its mobility ecosystem is to look at an integrated approach in design, thinking, and planning around mobility. Because what we need when we talk of mobility, it's not just to put a solar car there, right? It's not enough to just put a solar charged vehicle on the road. But it's important to see how well it is integrated as far as the last mile, the first mile connectivity is there. So unless we look at the entire value chain and looking at, modal efficiencies, we will not get there. So it is not just about putting an electric car on the road. It is about looking at mobility solutions for urban areas, for rural areas, for public transportation, for private transportation, looking at this entire spectrum and then seeing how integration will work so that for people, and if we talk about mobility as movement of people, there has to be seamless movement from one mode of transportation to another. So we are really looking at seamlessness, and how do we build that? By looking at an integrated design and thinking and planning around mobility. So one of the things that we are looking at is, how can mode-wise efficiencies be brought in? So how can system efficiencies and fuel efficiencies be created for each mode of transportation? And how do you create intermodal system efficiencies? And if that happens, then there will be seamless transition for those who actually opt for those mobility, and that is the people who use the various transportation options. So that's what we are looking at. We are also looking at mobility from an urban transformation aspect. How can mobility be designed in a manner that helps to build healthier, sustainable cities of tomorrow? We are also looking at use of intelligent systems and use of IoT, how to bring in more interconnectedness and integrated approach in mobility. What we're also looking at, reducing emissions from freight and logistics. As we know that freight and logistics forms a very large, significant part of mobility versus just passenger transport. So that's one area to look at if you're also looking at how low carbon mobility options could be designed for freight movement in various countries. And one of the opportunities that sustainable mobility provides is really to enhance also the share of public transportation and to really look at different modal shifts. So that's also another thing in the Indian context. For instance, we know that a large part of the freight and people move on the railways, but a significant part is on the roads as well. So how can sustainable mobility options be designed in a manner that you also have modal shifts happening and you have a large part of people also moving towards public transportation? So that's another aspect to look at. Of course, mobility solutions for urban and rural will be significantly different. In India, we see a large part of the rural economy being driven on different mobility options and also a large share of what we call non-motorized transportation, NMT. And how can non-motorized transportation be also be part of these sustainable mobility options? The other aspect to look at is shared mobility. We know in all countries there's a large part of shared mobility happening today. There are also app-based options that have come up. So that's another aspect that we are looking at in the Indian context. And there are, I'm sure, various learnings on all of these from other countries as well. And a few other aspects that I must highlight, which will be very important to this whole discussion on mobility, is about also looking at the right kind of economic instruments that will incentivize people to move from low carbon, more carbon intensive to low carbon mobility options, and how could government provide the policy options that incentivize people to do so. So the economic instruments and the financing options for sustainable mobility will also play a very important role. Another aspect that we must look at when we talk about, if you're talking about solar-based mobility, which is what this session is about, and the infrastructure that will go with the mobility, how can we also ensure the adaptation? Because it's not just important to mitigate carbon emissions and move to low carbon mobility, but how do we see that the infrastructure that is being built for sustainable mobility in the future is also resilient to the future impacts of climate change? So adaptation in the mobility sector also becomes a very key element. Lastly, that I want to focus on is the fuel options. In India, we're looking at various fuel options for mobility, electric being one of them, but we're also looking at other options like biofuels, bio-CNG, biogas, compressed biogas, different options that the government is trying to promote for mobility. I cannot but stress on the importance of promoting a startup ecosystem for mobility. It is very, very important because today, and at least we see that in the context of India, there are several startups that have come up in the country which are bringing innovative solutions on electric mobility and other sustainable mobility areas. And what the governments and the ISA could do is to provide the scale-up to these kind of startups to provide innovative solutions. And FICCI actually ran a grand challenge last year on startups, on mobility startups. And it's really interesting to see the spectrum of ideas, new ideas and innovative solutions that startups are providing. So that's another thought for today's discussion. And I think I will stop here and hand the floor back to Philippe.
Thank you, Rita, for this long introduction. I thank the ISA organization and the Sun World organizer for inviting me to moderate this session. I will start with a very short presentation, PowerPoint presentation, showing you what we are going to talk about on solar mobility. It will be a bit more focused because Rita told us of the holistic approach regarding mobility, and I agree that it has been treated like that. But within this, now we have 35 minutes for this discussion. We will focus on what solar energy and electric vehicle, how they can match together to bring new services to people. So here you have some example of solar charging station. Next slide. So it could be solar mobility with bicycles, two-wheelers, any type of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheel, of course. It could be cars like that, with solar being integrated in the body. We can go up to from 1 to several square meter on a car. It could be also for collective transportation. Here you have an example of buses. It could be metro or whatever. Two main figures to remember regarding the energy consumption of any vehicle. The weight is very important. So two-wheel will be much more efficient than a car. Here you have some example of consumption depending on the weight of several vehicles. On average, it's 100 to 200 watt-hour per kilometer. An average could be 15 kilowatt-hour per 100 kilometer. And it's important because it fully matches what solar energy, what a panel can provide you. In France, as an example, a carport delivers electricity in the range of 7 to 8 euro cents per kilowatt hour, which means that solar mobility gives you the lowest operating cost in the range of 1 euro, 1.2, 1.3 US dollar per 100 kilometers, compared to gasoline, gasoline, diesel engines. It's 5 times to 8 times cheaper. So it's really important. It's not the whole operating cost, the cost of ownership, because the upfront investment is still a bit higher, but it's decreasing very rapidly. And so far, the operating cost is really very low. To see which type of synergy we may have between solar and this electric car consumption, we have to know that 1 square meter of PV panel supplies in France in the range of 160 to 200 kilowatt hour per year, which means that it's enough to drive you 1,000 kilometers a year. So 1 square meter, only that size, it's 1,000 kilometers a year. Over the lifetime of the PV module, you have this 1,000 kilometers over the next 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, depends on the lifetime of the PV module. So it means that with a small roof, a small share of your roof, 9, 10, 16 square meter, you get enough energy to drive the average distance you may make with any car. EVs and PV so we have seen that in terms of area, it fits very well. In terms of services provided to the grid, they will have several presentations on these topics. So I skip this slide. And I thank you for your attention for this introduction. And now I will introduce my panelists. And I will start with Roland Rusch, Deputy Director of the IRENA Innovation and Technologies Center, based in Germany, where? In Bonn, I think, in Germany. Okay. So, Roland, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks for the invitation to speak here on behalf of the International Renewable Energy Agency. Thanks for the invitation to ISA to speak here about electromobility. IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency, is a governmental organization with 160 member countries. Many countries in Latin America are also members of IRENA, and we have another 26 member countries in accession to IRENA. And I would like to speak about the nexus between transport and the electricity sector. So we as IRENA support the deployment of renewable energy technologies in our member countries, and it's very important to look in how there is a connection, a nexus between renewable energies and electromobility. And let's say if you look at the number of electric vehicles, the most production of electric vehicles comes from China, then followed by the US, and then you see that there is a production in the European countries like Norway, UK, France, the Netherlands, and Germany. So these are the leading countries in the production. It's very interesting to see, not here in Latin America, but for example in Norway, 45% of the cars that have been registered in Norway are already electro vehicles. So the market share of new registrations in the market is in some countries, and specifically here Norway, already more than 50%. So every second car is already an electromobile car. The other thing is the number of charging stations, and especially the use of one charging station by the number of cars is increasing. The leading countries in kind of putting those public charging points in place is Netherlands, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and then Norway. So there is already a lot of happening. Of course, we as IRENA look into electromobility from a perspective on how to integrate more renewable energies into the system, the energy system. And we have done an innovation landscape report with looking into enabling technologies, business models, market design, and system operation. And one of the key innovations to provide flexibility to the electricity grids comes from the batteries that are in the electro vehicles. So that means integrating higher shares of renewable energies into energy system is supported by electro vehicles and electromobilities. And this is what we call sector coupling. So that means if we want to decarbonize the electricity sector, then there is a synergy between the electricity sector and the transport sector, where we have additional CO2 emission savings when we combine a renewable energy system with electromobility. And also there is an additional synergy, which means the electromobility provides flexibility to the electricity system, which helps the electricity system to integrate and to charge more electro vehicles. And I think this is the interest that IRENA has as the International Renewable Energy Agency to harvest those energies. And what we think is very important is the smart charging of electro vehicles. And if you look at this chart, you see the flexibility that is provided to the electricity system is starting by a time of use pricing without automated control. So that means you have a tariff, and if you're in the low tariff, decide to charge your car, you have basically the first stage of flexibility. If you have a system, an intelligent system that controls the tariff automatically and switches on and off, you have a little bit more flexibility. If you have a unidirectional control system, that means from the vehicle to the grid, it's more flexibility, but then a bidirectional system helps, let's say, from vehicle to the grid, both sides. So it means in certain times you can charge your battery of the cars, and sometimes the battery of the car is used to stabilize the system. Then you have a very flexible system. And if this can go very fast, also with switching tariffs, and you are using digitalization to charge this, then you have a full-fledged, flexible, smart charging system. And a full, flexible, smart charging system is actually what helps you to cut peak load, reduce curtailment, and it allows higher share of low-cost PV and wind electricity in the system. In general, I have to say electric vehicles have a small impact on the energy demand. So that means if you add electro vehicles and more electro vehicles to your energy system, the demand side is not so important. More important is that you have a system where you basically raise the peak load impact with the electromobility. And if you have a system that is operated on wind and solar, and you combine it with electromobility, then this electromobility has a huge impact on the wind and solar system. So that means renewable energy integration with systems that have higher shares of renewable energies. You need smart charging. There is no other way in doing this. And this chart is to show that the smart charging technology has also to come with business models and with market design and regulation. And here is a clear role of the policymakers to provide to the new technology also the regulation and the market design to play this. And here a smart chart that shows electricity demand is hardly impacted by slow charging and fast charging, slow charging with smart charging, or fast charging with battery. Electricity demand is not impacted, but the peak demand is very much impacted by slow charging when it is not controlled and by fast charging. And also very important is that fast charging and uncontrolled slow charging have a huge impact on the distribution grids. So this is very important to consider. And if you want to implement smart charging in your system, then you have to make sure that the owner of an electro car has the possibility to charge at home and to charge at the workspace, and then you can implement smart charging. And there is two case studies I would briefly mention. If you use smart charging, then you can save up to 50% of the costs of reinforcing the grid. In the case of Hamburg, that was a city in Germany where the implementation of smart charging was going alongside with costs of 2 million euro, while a reinforcement of the grid would have cost 20 million euros. So that means for policymaker, renewable energy and smart charging has to come together, and it is very important that you set up your infrastructure for the renewable energies also together in combination with electromobility, and then you can harvest the benefits from both aspects. Decarbonizing the transport sector by using higher shares of renewable energy in the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you for showing us the growing EV market and reminding the importance of smart charging, providing flexibility to the system, and also concluding that digitalization is going to be at the cornerstone of the future energy system. I will hand over to Johannes Uhl, who is project director at the famous German GIZ in the Energy Foreign Policy Division. So, Johannes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hopefully famous, not infamous in that regard. I think it's very, very fitting for me to be here, and I thank the organizers very much for having invited me, because what we see currently happening in the global transport sector and the global energy sectors is these two dimensions of the transition. There is tremendous opportunity in the technologies that we have, and I think the presentations we have just seen show this very well, that there is a lot of applications already out there, and now we need to find the right solutions to harness it, to foster the development. But there's another dimension to it, and this is the overall framework, the regulatory, but also the cultural, political framework that we need to address in order for this transformation to be successful. And what we have done on behalf of the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and together with the World Economic Forum and a German think tank, is that we have asked experts in the field what they think the transport sector will look like in 30 to 40 years, and what actions are needed in order to achieve the decarbonization, the transformation of the transport sector. We call this T for under 2, transport for below 2 degrees or under 2 degrees. And what comes out is that this transformation in the transport sector is significantly different from what we have seen in the electricity sector or in the power sector proper before, because nowadays we're dealing a lot with the consumer, and they are a lot harder to convince about changes that are necessary. So it's we have to deal with issues of acceptance, we have to deal with issues of experience of the user, and this needs to be addressed in the policy framework. And what comes out of this, just to give you some examples, obviously as a general approach, we have to understand transport not as a sector distinguished from electricity or distinguished from power, but as a connector between the sectors to harness and to make use of all the opportunities that are there. And then also to create opportunities for people to experience what is possible. I have had one very interesting talk in the course of this research project with someone that run this project by DHL, the famous shipping company, and they have introduced electric, what they call street scooters, to deliver parcels to neighborhoods in Germany. And in parallel, they made a study on the acceptance of electromobility, and they could really show that there's a significantly higher number of people that accept electric vehicles and that think that they would buy an electric vehicle in the future where these street scooters have been running and have been delivering parcels. So it's a lot about experience, and that brings us obviously to the question of scale as an opportunity for experience, but also as an opportunity to bring down costs. The second element, or the second dimension, is business. We need new business models in order to combine the sectors of electricity, but also to create the right experience, to make it as easy as possible for the consumer. And mobility as a service, for example, is an important step here. And Rita has already mentioned that before. We need a business environment that is favorable for innovation, to create startups, and then obviously also to make these solutions bankable. And finally, we also have to look at the international framework that is there. The transport is by its very nature something that is not only confined to the borders of the nation states, so we need international regulation that creates the right frameworks to ease the transformation, and that goes into many different directions. We have to have the proper standards in technology, but also in the use of data. We have to look at the consequences that arise from the transformation. Keep in mind, over half of the global petrol demand still goes into transport. So if we shift to electric mobility, that will have tremendous effects on the petrol-producing countries. And it goes on and on. We have to talk about intellectual property and so on, and also look into trade policy, for example, in order to create the right frameworks. And finally, we also have to look at who's on the at the table to discuss these things. Rita has already mentioned that often it's also cities that play a crucial role, and they know best what is needed in terms of transport and in terms of the right infrastructure. So they should be brought at the table as well to create a favorable international framework for this transformation.
Thank you, Johannes. For enlarging the scope beyond technology, of course. Next speaker is going to be Paula, who is going to share with us the Spanish example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
do you have there the...
Yes, of course.
I think it's on...
No, I think it's... Yeah. Bueno, buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Voy a hablar en español. Las diapositivas están en inglés. Pero bueno, así quería hacer una combinación entre aquellos que hablan en inglés y que estamos en Perú y creamos necesario hablar en español. Soy Paula Santos y soy la responsable del departamento técnico de la Unión Española Fotovoltaica y voy a hacerlo muy breve porque somos muchos y entendemos que todos queremos hablar, ¿no? Lo que sí quería tratar es un poco comentaros qué es UNEF y relacionar la importancia de la combinación de los vehículos eléctricos y de la fotovoltaica. Y en concreto, hablaros del caso español, de la planificación que ha hecho el nuevo gobierno y de comentaros un poco cómo está el sector fotovoltaico. En cualquier caso, cualquier duda que tengan, pueden luego comunicarse conmigo y podré responder sus preguntas. UNEF básicamente es la asociación del sector español que representa a la fotovoltaica. Y tenemos más de casi 400 compañías representando el 85% del sector. Todos los asociados que forman parte de UNEF son muy variados, desde productores a distribuidores, operadores del sistema y grupos mixtos como pueden ser despachos de abogados, ¿no? Entonces, básicamente, somos una asociación además internacional que trabajamos por la representatividad del sector no solo a nivel nacional, sino también a nivel internacional. Somos miembros del Global Solar Council, Solar Power Europe as well. Y, evidentemente, los servicios que ofrecemos están relacionados con la representatividad del sector fotovoltaico en España y de forma internacional. También, como decía, promovemos la internacionalización y somos un canal de información y de consultoría para nuestros miembros, de tal manera que todos aquellos miembros que deseen información sobre el sector o que deseen comunicarnos los problemas que se están encontrando para desarrollar sus proyectos, se comunican con nosotros y nosotros somos el puente con las instituciones. Bien, contexto de vehículos eléctricos que yo creo que ya se ha hablado mucho, pero creía necesario. Todos hemos hablado aquí durante, de hecho, toda la jornada del día de hoy, que el cambio climático es algo que está ocurriendo y que ya estamos viendo los efectos, ¿no? Y que es muy importante que todos los países realicen una planificación energética para poder mitigar o para poder luchar y adaptarse a ese cambio climático. Pero es importante también mirar cada uno de los sectores para poder establecer esos objetivos. Y en el caso del transporte, es el único sector que ha incrementado sus emisiones de CO2 desde 1990. Y, de hecho, representa un cuarto de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero en Europa. Y, además, todos sabemos que es el principal causante de la contaminación del aire. Por lo tanto, es necesario descarbonizar la economía, pero, en concreto, descarbonizar el transporte y electrificarlo, ¿no? Algunos datos muy rápidos que se complementan con lo que ya se ha dicho. El sector de los vehículos eléctricos ya se ha venido desarrollando. Y, de hecho, vemos que en 2018 el global stock, es decir, digamos que la cantidad de vehículos eléctricos que hay en total, en 2018 llegó a 5 millones, superando casi siendo el doble del 2017. Y, como comentaba Roland, China es el líder, seguido de Europa y de los Estados Unidos. Para la electrificación, como ya se ha comentado, también es muy importante no solo ver el global stock de vehículos eléctricos, sino la cantidad de charging points, es decir, de sitios de recarga que se están instalando. Y como vemos aquí, en 2018 se han llegado a instalar 5,2 millones, de los cuales 4,6, es decir, casi todos, son privados y son slow chargers, es decir, de carga lenta. Pero todavía, y a pesar de que el sector de la electrificación del transporte se está desarrollando, todavía queda mucho que hacer. Si vemos esta gráfica, por ejemplo, vemos que la mayor parte de los transportes de carretera están dominados por combustibles fósiles, ¿no? ¿Qué hay que hacer? Que además ya se ha nombrado y ya se ha estado hablando sobre ello. ¿Qué hay que hacer para mejorar y para trabajar la electrificación del transporte? Pues parte pasa por tareas regulatorias. Los gobiernos deben de establecer una planificación y establecer una serie de objetivos, además de una estructura sólida legislativa que permita el desarrollo de las energías renovables y en concreto de la movilidad eléctrica. Se tienen que reducir los costes, especialmente de las baterías. Empieza a reducirse muchísimo, es decir, ha decrecido un 85% en 8 años, pero tiene que seguir decreciendo para ser competitivo. Y como comentaba Roland, es muy importante que el vehículo eléctrico vaya acompañado con el aumento de energías renovables en el mix energético, para que de esta forma sea green. Y en este sentido, la combinación, como ya se ha comentado, de fotovoltaica y de vehículo eléctrico es interesantísima y es primordial. Desde vehículos eléctricos que están cargados con energía fotovoltaica, on-site, que significa que están cargados en el mismo sitio en el que se encuentra la instalación de generación, o off-site, es decir, en otro lugar, hasta estaciones, que ya se ha comentado, de recarga que cuenten con sistemas fotovoltaicos, como estas pérgolas, y la última revolución, que es que la propia fotovoltaica está integrada en el vehículo o también en otros tipos de transporte, ¿no? Este tipo de transporte en el cual la fotovoltaica está integrado dentro del vehículo es muy interesante, pero implica que el sector tiene que ir un poco más allá y sobre todo en el sector de la investigación. Es decir, se tiene que investigar y seguir investigando en células fotovoltaicas que sean lightweight, es decir, que sean mucho más no tan pesadas, que sean flexibles y que sean muy eficientes. Y además se tienen que introducir nuevas tecnologías y se tienen que adaptar a las nuevas condiciones que implica que una placa fotovoltaica se esté moviendo, ¿no? ¿Cuáles son las ventajas? También se ha comentado. Los vehículos eléctricos van a suponer ventajas en el desarrollo de nuevos modelos energéticos, puede dar servicios a la red igual que una batería, como ya también ha comentado Roland, y evidentemente la reducción de emisiones de CO2. ¿Cuál es el caso español? Muy rápidamente. España tiene 5,1 gigas instalados en 2018. Esto va a cambiar y esto es importante que se transmita porque esto es 2018. Y en el último año se han producido muchísimos cambios legislativos en España, enormes. De hecho, como decía, yo estaré aquí los 2 días de congresos que quedan, de manera que si quieren saber más, no duden en contactarme. Pero todos estos cambios legislativos han creado, o creemos que suponen un punto de inflexión para el desarrollo del sector fotovoltaico en España. Uno de ellos es que se han establecido unos objetivos nacionales de energía y clima. Se ha establecido un objetivo de un 42% de energías renovables en la energía final, un 72% de energías renovables en la generación eléctrica, así como reducciones en un 21% de las emisiones de CO2 y un aumento de la eficiencia energética en 39,6%. Y también se ha establecido un objetivo de vehículos eléctricos. Se quiere establecer el objetivo que para 2030 haya una flota de 5 millones en España. ¿Pero cuál es el número actual? Estos. En España ahora mismo hay 57.681 estimados vehículos eléctricos, una flota. Estos son datos dados por la asociación AEDIBE, que es la Asociación de Movilidad Eléctrica en España. De manera que hay muchísimo trabajo. Hay muchísimo trabajo desde el gobierno español, de las asociaciones como nosotros y desde las propias compañías privadas para poder desarrollar y para poder llegar a estos objetivos planificados. En términos de fotovoltaica, el objetivo fijado es de 37 gigas. Si vemos dónde estamos en 5,1, implicaría llegar hasta el final, 37. Esto suponiendo que el desarrollo del sector fotovoltaico se realice de una manera estable, ¿no? Nosotros creemos que se va a llegar, y creemos que se va a llegar porque ahora mismo en las solicitudes de acceso y conexión a la red eléctrica ya hay en proceso de tramitación y casi en puesta de servicio 38 gigas. por lo tanto creemos que vamos a llegar de sobra. Pero aún así es importante transmitir que el sector fotovoltaico está cambiando, que se están introduciendo objetivos tanto de energías renovables y también de vehículo eléctrico y que creemos que vamos a llegar, pero que para ello la planificación y el trabajo continuo de todos los actores del sector es primordial. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Paola, for showing us the importance of innovation and fixing objectives and roadmaps, of course. Last speaker is Immaculada from INES, International Project Manager at INES.
Yep.
She's going to talk to us about the potential impact of electric vehicle on the grid and in domestic installations.
Gracias, Philippe. Gracias también a Organización Solar Internacional para invitarme y a todos los organizadores del Sunwall. Voy a intentar ir un poco más lento para facilitar la labor de los traductores, si acaso, para darles un poco más de espacio a traducir entre frase y frase. Voy a testimoniar un poco desde el caso de Francia, donde se han fijado objetivos de cero emisiones y donde se dan subsidios directos para reducir el coste de la compra de vehículos eléctricos y también para la instalación de infraestructuras de recarga para los vehículos. Vemos que se han hecho muchas mejoras en Francia. Si miramos en términos de cifras, en 2017 había unos 140.000 vehículos 100% eléctricos en circulación, cuando en 2018 fueron 190.000 que estaban en circulación. Por lo tanto, ha habido una mejora, la cual es palpable, es evidente, pero aún hay un largo camino que recorrer. Acabo de volver justo hace menos de 48 horas de una misión en Chile, donde estamos implementando amplios proyectos en energía solar. Y justo cuando monté en el avión, miré en las diferentes revistas que había delante y la primera página donde abrí, había un coche bien grande en la página izquierda con una mujer que se lo miraba desde su casa y el eslogan era "Upgrade your status quo", lo que vendría a ser como "mejora tu posición social". Por lo tanto, asociado a si compras este carro, este coche, vas a mejorar tu posición social. Evidentemente, el coche no era eléctrico para nada. Aquí es donde venía mi reflexión también de decir, bueno, hay un largo camino que recorrer, porque si aún estamos asociando la posición social a un tipo de diseño de vehículo, a un tipo de dimensión, y no tanto a su utilidad y a su impacto que puede tener en referencia a diferentes servicios y impacto para el medio ambiente y energético, aún tenemos un largo camino que recorrer. Y la segunda reflexión que me motivó fue asociar un poco las imágenes que iban contrapuestas en las dos páginas de la revista, ¿no? Por un lado el vehículo y el otro la residencia, la casa. Y es que en las diferentes conferencias que organizamos en INES hace unos 2 meses, hablando con los diferentes actores del sector público y del sector privado, todos me comentaron un poco cuál es la visión de futuro próxima que tienen en sus mentes y quería un poco en relación a lo que comentaba señora Rita hace unos momentos de tener una visión holística cuando hablamos de movilidad. Y eso se traducía en querer tener una convergencia entre el sector de movilidad eléctrica y el sector de la vivienda. En principio, son dos conceptos que parecen no tener una conexión muy amplia, en los cuales sus modelos de negocios han evolucionado muy separadamente, pero que en cambio hay muchos factores y nexos comunes entre ambos. Por ejemplo, son caros. Tanto la vivienda como la movilidad son recursos caros para su uso y su mantenimiento. No son, hasta el momento presente, muy eficientes energéticamente y quedan fácilmente y rápidamente obsoletos. Entonces, hay algunas empresas que han empezado a entender esta oportunidad de mercado, esta oportunidad de crecimiento, esa transformación donde la movilidad eléctrica puede tener su impulso si la asociamos al sector de la vivienda. Hay algunas empresas como Google, Amazon, que están invirtiendo no solo en movilidad eléctrica, sino también en soluciones para ciudades inteligentes. Entonces, ¿cómo llegar a acoplar estos dos sectores de movilidad eléctrica y de vivienda inteligente? El primer pilar base y necesario serían las políticas necesarias a nivel nacional y regional. El segundo serían recursos digitales para hacer una buena conexión entre ambos sectores. Y la última sería la multilocalización de recursos energéticos con iniciativas como, por ejemplo, Vehicle to Grid. Los beneficios son claros. Para autoridades implicaría un logro de sus objetivos en reducción de emisiones. Y para los consumidores también, pues permitiría lograr lo que también señora Rita comentaba al inicio con su eslogan Clean, Safe, Connected. Permitiría una conexión entre la parte de movilidad y la parte de vivienda. Permitiría una reducción de emisiones en dióxido de carbono. Y permitiría una reducción también en recursos financieros que se utilizan y se invierten tanto en el sector de movilidad como en el sector de vivienda. Si bien los beneficios son claros, eso no quiere decir que no haya aún muchos retos que resolver y que de hecho son los que impiden hasta el momento presente no solo la convergencia entre los dos sectores de movilidad eléctrica y vivienda, sino también del scaling up, de la utilización a una escala más grande de la movilidad eléctrica en sí solo, ¿no? Y esa es que la oferta de vehículos eléctricos es aún muy baja, la oferta de vehículos eléctricos es aún muy cara, hay ausencia de infraestructura de sistemas de recarga, hay ausencia también de sistemas de conexión entre los sistemas de recarga y las viviendas. Hay también algunas barreras en términos regulatorios y jurídicos. Por ejemplo, si miramos la regulación térmica 2020 que se aplica a edificios públicos y a nuevos edificios en ámbito de Unión Europea, no hay ninguna mención específica en movilidad. No se está integrando aún esa visión en cómo podemos acoplar la movilidad eléctrica y la vivienda. Se sigue tratando aún como dos tópicos, dos aspectos absolutamente separados. Y la última dificultad y objetivo es también la reticencia de algunos actores a revisar sus modelos de negocios y a invertir en estas nuevas oportunidades de movilidad eléctrica. Si sumamos todas esas barreras, lo que nos da resultado es un retraso en la implementación de estas iniciativas para ciudadanos, empresas e inversores. Para finalizar, una pequeña solución y un mensaje positivo para cerrar. Quizás uno de los retos principales que tenemos todos aquí a día de hoy, a diferentes escalas, desde las diferentes organizaciones y comunidades donde trabajamos, es la creación de valor de lo que puede implicar la movilidad eléctrica. Eso acompañado de más trabajos de academia, de investigación y la puesta en marcha de más proyectos pilotos que ayuden al sector financiero, sobre todo, y de inversión, a ver que es una solución rentable y de futuro. Aunque algunas empresas y bancos incluso ya lo están empezando a ver como una oportunidad de crecimiento y transformación y están ofreciendo algunas opciones de leasing para poder financiar la movilidad eléctrica y su convergencia con el sector de la vivienda. Gracias.
Thank you, Immaculada. I would like to give an opportunity to the audience to ask a few questions. We are going to take maybe one or two questions. Are there any? There's one there. Yes, and a second one here.
I go first? Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you for your presentation and sharing the information with us. I just made an observation that the panelists representing countries which are within top 10 vehicle manufacturers in the world. So my question is, do you think that a long-term vision for the mobility, low-carbon mobility for a vehicle producing and vehicle importing country would be different? Just a question for anyone. Thank you.
Yes, second question.
Buenas tardes. Tengo dos preguntas solamente. La primera, me he dado cuenta de que solo han abordado el tema de movilidad eléctrica desde lo que es la perspectiva del vehículo pequeño. Entonces, yo quería saber cuáles son los últimos avances, por ejemplo, para los grandes vehículos de carga pesada para los sectores, por ejemplo, de minería o de construcción, o si había avances ahí, o si alguien de repente está investigando en esas aplicaciones. Y segundo era para ese escenario que decían de utilizar los vehículos eléctricos para darle estabilidad al sistema. Ese escenario de carga y descarga de la batería no cortaría mucho la vida útil del vehículo eléctrico. Eso es todo.
Thank you for these two questions. So the first one about the difference between exporting countries and the one which are manufacturing electric vehicle. What could be the difference? Who feels like answering? Maybe I can try. Of course.
I think what you can observe is if you say a leader in